Welcome everybody. Happy Wednesday. Happy 2023. I hope everyone's year is off to a mellow start, actually, not fast start, mellow start, since the holidays are behind us. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We are Seveney Investments. We have a fund that is open to accredited and non-accredited investors, offering 8% annually, paid in monthly dividends. Right now, our minimum investment is $500. However, that will be changing as of February 1st to $2,500. So if you're on the fence thinking about it, just something to keep in mind. And then we also still do have a limited number of bonus shares available, and those start at a $25,000 investment. Now, we are joined today by Derreck Long of Quest Trust, and Derrick is going to be talking. Well, I'll let you do a little bit of an intro on yourself, but Derrick is going to be, we invited him on because, as you know, one of the things that you can invest with when you're investing with Seveney is you can use a self-directed IRA. So Derrick works at Quest. Quest is one of the largest and one of our favorite custodians to work with. So, and Derrick is very knowledgeable, always willing to get on the phone with people. So I wanted him to come on, talk a little bit about, what a self-directed IRA is, and then kind of what it looks like if you were to invest in Seveney. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. I do appreciate the intro, and thank you, Chris, for having me on here.
No, thank you, Derrick.
I will say, so as we kind of go through a lot of this stuff, I'm going to be using a PowerPoint, but I'm going to go really quick through it because I'm more of a visual person. I think a lot of times when we use PowerPoints and we're going through those things, people get bored. So if you have questions as I'm kind of talking or about any topic, put it in the chat box. I'll pause. I'll answer them right on the spot as well. But am I going to?
I was going to say we'll answer them at the end, but look at this service. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, you should be good to share, Derrick.
Cool. All right.
And one thing while he starts, I just want to kind of mention as part of this webinar for people out there. There's two strategies we're going to be discussing today, which is self-directed IRAs, and then of course our fund, which between these two, I wasn't until about 40 years old I realized you could use a self-directed IRA, because every company I work for in the W-2 world gave me two options: move it to my next employer or keep it with my others, not the third option of, oh, you could open it at Quest. And then the second part of that is, like Lauren mentioned, the fund that we're offering is a private company that allows for any investor to invest in. And most people usually hear the term accredited investor, or you have to have certain net worth requirements. With the fund that we're offering, getting SEC qualified, we are allowed to accept any investor over 18. So go ahead, Derrick.
I actually love that, what you just happened to mention, because a lot of times the question I get people that they ask me is like, well, Derrick, I see all these great investment opportunities, but I'm not accredited. I can't become accredited unless I do one of these investments. So it is sometimes difficult. And so if you guys are listening, Chris is absolutely right. He has to go through, Chris and Lauren and Seveney has to go through so much background work with the SEC and making sure things are qualified to go ahead and raise capital from someone that's not labeled as accredited. So them taking those steps is a big opportunity for everyone out there listening. It really, really is. So I like to know that.
One thing I wanted to ask, Derrick, maybe have you clarify for people, and it's something I get a lot, is let's say I call in and I'm like, I have an self-directed IRA. It's with Fidelity. How do I get started? Can you explain the difference between a self-directed brokerage account with Fidelity and a self-directed IRA with Quest or one of the other custodians similar to you? And
sure,
maybe the advantages and disadvantages of both.
Right now. That's actually part of my presentation. If I can just use
that. Just go for it then.
Yeah. What is the minimum you have to have in sense to do this? And there is a term offering. So I'm gonna let you guys answer both those questions that just popped up, Lauren and Chris. They're in the chat box, just while I'm kind of going. Guys, once again, as I go through this, use the Q&A box, use the chat box so I can look at those. I call this the passive side of using your IRAs. I am going to go really quick, though, through a lot of this, because once again, I want to make sure we're getting to the mathematical side of things. I'm a nerd. I sit down, I research tax code, I really do, right? I memorize IRS publications, and I get to speak in front of Congress at the Capitol on a quarterly basis. What's nice is myself, I do represent on a government relations committee every self-directed IRA company out there. So this is why I've been elected to do that. So a lot of times when I give presentations, not only have to be really knowledgeable in a lot of different areas, but I many times don't get the chance to represent Quest because I'm representing IRAs. So I do like working with Seveney Investments and stuff and going through these because I get to actually represent, the company I work with. So as we go through this, guys, everyone always has their disclaimer. Remember, I'm only here for your educational aspects. Can't give you any type of legal advice, okay? But still feel free to ask me because certain times you don't need legal advice. You just need some good direction. Now, I always start off and I tell everyone that the IRS puts us all into two categories, right? The two categories being a taxable category and a non-taxable category. And it's crazy because a lot of times people, they don't realize this is how the IRS views all of us. And we're only used to working on that left side of the screen, right? A taxable category is you. Or if you establish an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, a trust, it doesn't matter what it is. When you set up one of these entities or you make money, you make profit, you do an investment, you have to pay your taxes, right? Well, when I say a non-taxable entity, people immediately jump to a church, a charity, maybe a nonprofit organization, which is all true, but a self-directed IRA falls into this category, which is really nice. It could be a solo 401k or a QRP plan. So as Lauren was already mentioning, what is a self-directed IRA and how does it differ? Every time I ask this question directly, it's really, really funny because I never get the right answer. I've been doing this since 2011. And no one has yet given me the right answer. What is a self-directed IRA? You know why? Because they're made up. They're fake. They don't exist. There is no such thing as a self-directed IRA, right? Just to be clear, is a self-directed IRA the same as a self-directed solo 401k? Not exactly. And I'll explain that in just a minute. So good question, Stephen, who just asked that. So ultimately, guys, when we talk about self-directed IRAs, understand Congress and the IRS do not recognize that term. They just call it an IRA, an individual retirement account. We call it self-directed as a custodian because every custodian lets you do something different. So if I set up a self-directed IRA at Fidelity, Fidelity will let me invest in stocks, bonds, CDs, mutual funds. If you set one up with Quest, we will let you invest in real estate style assets. Some custodians will let you invest in gold and silver. Some custodians let you invest in cryptocurrency. Try not to think of us as competitors or that one is better than the other. It's just different, right? If I want to buy Apple stock, I got to go to like a Fidelity. If I want to invest in property, you have to come to me, right? That's all it is. So self-directed is just a marketing term. Now, the reason you want to use one of these, all right, is really for, I always label first off, diversification. Most of the time you have, and Chris was mentioning earlier, you might have an old 401k at an employer, but you feel like you're diversified, but it's all diversified in those public assets, stocks, bonds, CDs, mutual funds, right? Well, when the market crashes, you watch it all come down. So let's take a portion of that money and move it to the private sector, being usually small business, real estate, notes, hedge funds, syndications, etc. Right? Every time you do an investment, though, remember you are a taxable entity. Let's just, as a base example, said you did a fix and flip. You made $10,000 in profit. You don't want to get to keep 10 grand, do you? The IRS steps in and they take a small portion out called taxation.
Small?
Yes, yeah. We like to label it as small, but I mean, come on. But did you know you guys could do that exact same fix and flip in our example? Make that same $10,000 using your IRA and have all of it be tax-free. All of it. That means you get to capitalize on more of your income you're making. If you invest into someone's note fund, what's really nice is every time they make a payment to you, that payment is not taxable. This allows you to make more money, not only using the aspects of compounding interest, but A, you're not paying the IRS. Lastly, something I like to label as invest in what you know best. And I'll show more examples of this in just a second, but really understanding what you're invested in. A lot of times I tell people, what stocks do you own in your 401k? And I get the, oh, why did the mutual fund go up or down? Oh, well, it's because they don't understand their investment. All right. So the more you understand, the easier it is to make profit. Now, the accounts that you typically see that will be self-directed are up here on the screen. The traditional and Roth IRA are self-directed IRAs, SEPs and Simples, Coverdales and HSAs, absolutely. And then the question came up a little bit ago about the solo 401k. All of these accounts can be self-directed in their own rights in their own ways, but they are labeled as individual accounts themselves. So they each have their own rules, their own regulations, their own contribution limits, those type of things, right? All you want to do is make sure whichever account you set up, you first talk with an educated IRA specialist, and they'll walk you through which ones make the most sense for you. Because realistically, you might qualify for a whole bunch of them, and you don't want to get stuck on the phone with a salesperson, right? When you're stuck on the phone with a salesperson, they're going to try to sell you on every single one of those accounts. And realistically, it's not what you need. You might only need one, maybe two of them. So overall, all these accounts can be self-directed, and it's just something you need to kind of really look at. Now we're going to switch gears and talk about why we should be using these. And I'm going to talk about from the borrower's perspective, for those of you out there looking to borrow money, right? And we're going to be talking about the lender's perspective. Now, every time we talk about the borrower's perspective, we got to think of where does people's money sit? And think of yourself as an individual. Do you have more money sitting in that checking account right now that you have access to, or more money in that old 401k or IRA that you've probably been shoveling money in for 5, 10, 15, sometimes 20 years, right? So if you are looking to borrow money, a lot of times leveraging someone's IRA is the best way to go about it. And I like to call it OPI, not the nail polish. I didn't know that was nail polish until my wife told me, right? I really didn't. It was kind of embarrassing, but hey, this whole time I've been teaching this class and never knew that. So always using that term, but I call it other people's IRAs, right? We're going to leverage those. So if you're out there, using other people's retirement accounts is a great way for you as an individual to create your own private financing source. It really, really is. So if you ask someone, and I'm sure some of you guys out there have experienced this, hey, do you have money? No, I don't have any money right now. I'm broke. Or no, I already put all my money in these other investments. Or I don't know about that. I just try to do, I own a rental property. I'm afraid the tenants are getting ready to leave because the lease is up or something like that. But when you ask someone, hey, do you have a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, a SEP, a Simple, a 401k, an old employer plan, an HSA, ESA, one of these type of accounts, most people will say yes. So this is nice to know that this is just kind of a different aspect, and you have to change your mind of thinking of where does someone's money sit. And once you realize that you can have access to this capital, that can open up so many different doors to new investments. And we're going to start to look at that right now. So first off, let's look at it from a borrower's perspective. If you're looking to borrow money, right, and you're like, man, Derek, I know IRAs out there, they can lend me some money, but what are some things I should consider? Well, let's start off with the relationship. You know why Lauren brings me on here? Do you know why I like to help Lauren out as well and help Chris? It's because we have a relationship. We originally met at an event. You know, we connected. We're like, hey, look, this seems to be a good fit. And we built a good relationship with one another. We talk realistically, probably on a weekly basis about other clients and those type of things, whether it's via email, via the phone, etc. So building a relationship, if you're a borrower with a good lender, is the first step, right? You can't just walk up someone and the very first thing is saying, hey, can I have $100,000 for this deal? It ain't going to work. Right? Imagine if I did that with my wife on our very first date. If I really, as a guy, asked for everything I wanted, it ain't gonna happen, right? You got to play the game. So let's look at some other things, right? You need to, and I call it taking the temperature. Now, I stole that term from my dad, and I'll show you why in a little bit, but really look at the risk tolerance. Sometimes you'll have some older people. When I say older, I'm going to go with 70 and older. They're not going to be willing to take as big of a risk in lending you funds, even if you're going to offer an awesome rate of return. Why? Because they're older. This could be all the capital they have. Now, same aspect. If you're talking to someone who's 30, maybe 35 years old, they might be more willing to risk something because they have a long time to make it up. So make sure you're checking their temperature, right? What is their risk tolerance? You know, if you are going to be a borrower, you want to make the process painless for them, right? Seveney Investments does this excellently if you're looking to lend or invest in one of their funds. They go through so many steps with you and they help you fill out all the paperwork. Why? Because they're looking for you to invest with them. And this is a good sign of a good borrower. Not because of like, oh, they don't want you to see the stuff, but no, they're helping you. They're making it painless on you. They're making things much easier for you by helping you fill out any questions, any documents that might come along. Right?
Derek, can I
Lastly-
come here for a second?
Yeah.
So I think that also goes to the custodian you're working with. You know, we can do as a sponsor and whatnot as much as we can to help you, but also if you are with a custodian or if you're looking to open a self-directed IRA with a, you know, custodian, really do your homework on, you know, what is that customer service like? You know, like Derek said, that's something, and full transparency, there is no like nothing in it for me when I refer people to Derek or vice versa. You know, it's really just because, you know, there's a ton of custodians out there, and I'd say a handful of them really have top-notch customer service and make it seamless for their investors to invest in alternative assets such as real estate. So kind of goes both ways, making sure that the sponsor makes that process seamless for you, but also that the custodian makes that process seamless for you. So, you know, it's not confusing.
Yeah.
And the way that's done is, and this is what Lauren does an excellent job with, as well as Derek and his staff, is there's an actual human on the other side where you can pick up the phone and call and ask a question, and you get somebody who is educated and knows how to walk you through that process. It's not getting redirected 47 times. You go straight to the individual and somebody's there to pick up the phone.
And Chris is absolutely right. At SoQuest, we don't use automated system. You can call us right now. Someone's going to pick up the phone and answer and be like, hey, how can I help you? And I think a lot of companies miss the boat on that nowadays. Not just IRA companies, but just your insurance company. Call the grocery store. You're going to get an automated system. You're like, come on, man. Like it's so hard to get a hold of someone nowadays. So thank you for that. I get little shout outs. I love it. So let's switch gears. We're going to talk about the lender's perspective. If you are looking to lend money, there's a lot of things to consider. And I have fallen into this trap multiple times. So I'm going to go with things that I've kind of been taught and things that I started following in my own practices. And then we're going to show you kind of the differences in each side of it, right? So first off, I'm never going to lend money on something me as an individual I don't want to own. So if I'm going to use my IRA, my retirement money, the money I've saved up my whole life, right? Well, I'm probably not going to lend it on something I'm not excited to own if something goes wrong, right? Next, this you'll see a lot happen in fix and flips more often, but where I have to lend money, right, for repairs. Well, I'm not going to lend you all that money up front. I'm going to probably escrow those payments out to you. So this is good to know as well. Next, don't lend money to someone that you don't feel comfortable foreclosing on. Prime example, if I lent money to my sister right now, well, if I was and she did something wrong, I actually have to legally foreclose on her if I use my IRA. I can't just say, well, it's okay. I love you, sis. Can you imagine how awkward our Thanksgiving would be if I had to go through those processes with my little sister? Yikes. Next, all right, if your loan goes into default, take action immediately. Next, collect interest on a monthly basis. So if you are a lender or you're an investor looking to invest in someone, look to someone that's going to make monthly payments to you consistently, right? And someone has a good track record of this. Lastly, I think I got two more. Nope, that was it. Lastly is if you are unsure about the loan, hire professionals to evaluate the overall deal. Don't be afraid to hire your own attorney for some of these things, okay? So as we go through all of this stuff, you also have to look at things from title insurance, hazard insurance, and this sounds really weird, but evidence of the physical property. I've seen a lot of deals where someone lends money and there really is no property and they just took someone's face value. So overall, these are a lot of things to kind of consider. So why do I bring all these up? Normally, when I'm talking about being a lender, right, I, as an individual, am looking to lend one person money. That's it. I'm going to find someone that's looking to do a fix and flip, and I'm going to take my money in my IRA and lend them money. And this is kind of how I've always gone about it. So I'm going to show you a couple of different case studies of what that looks like and where my thought process has probably been a little flawed. Because overall, everything I just mentioned, you're sitting there, you're probably watching like, well, oh, that makes perfect sense. So I'm going to show you the difference between me, myself, and my dad. Now, just so you guys are aware, my dad is actually the one of the owners of Quest Trust Company, right? Quest, we hold right now about 2.7 billion assets under management. So my dad has a lot of experience in this. And I am the young guy that is really gung-ho and trying to do a lot of investments because I think that's where I'm going to get all my earnings. So I'm going to start with case study 1, showing what my dad does versus what I do. And it's really funny to see how I get what I consider to be a better rate of return, but at the end, it's really not. So the first one is what my dad does. And he says he's boring and easy. He wants to do the least amount of work to have the largest rate of return he can. So he chose a note fund. Now it's really funny is as he looks for these different types of note funds that he kind of goes through, the reason he likes this is he does understand notes. He likes to know that there's collateral for each individual note itself. Usually note funds, the reason people have these funds put together is because it's collateralized by multiple different properties and you get an average rate of return over all the notes. So a lot of people really, really do like this aspect. So my dad was looking for something right around an 8% rate of return, about a 5-year time frame, and he needed something that would make monthly payments to him, and he's looking to invest about $100,000. That's it.
We've got the perfect opportunity for your father.
Look at this, Chris. So overall, my dad has to do some due diligence first, right? So if he's going to invest with someone, he's going to check out their social media. I know it seems silly, guys, but man, social media is a free, easy aspect because boy, do people like to talk trash. So if you're looking at someone's social media and you see a lot of trash talking on there, a lot of people, you know what? That might be something to consider. But when you're actually looking on what's a free platform that people can post their own opinions about your company, about you, guess what, guys? If you're not seeing a lot of negativity on there, that's probably a good sign. Most people let you talk to other investors or host events where other investors can come together and just naturally network and chat. Lastly, is make sure they're following good SEC guidelines and using good SEC attorneys. Chris mentioned this earlier, how that's what they're doing to bring in a new fund for non-accredited investors. Once again, that's a good sign when they're open to looking at these things and not trying to be cheap and get around that stuff. All right. Well, this is my dad's investment. That's all it is. So we're going to come back to that because notice my dad's is going to last 5 years. I'm going to go to my case studies and my investments. So case study number 2, I had a buddy of mine. His name was Waleed. He found a house. He's going to buy it for about $120,000. The rehab costs was 60 to 70 grand and the ARV was 275. Pretty easy fix and flip when you think about what's at stake here. It got even better. He told me he only needed $30,000 and he would give me a first lien position. Not bad. I'll take my first lien position for 30 grand. In addition, we negotiated some terms. I'm going to charge him 9% interest and 2 points on the overall back end. So when we talk about 2 points, it's really 2 origination fees, right? Points is just a short term for that. But overall, I'm going to get 11%. I'm beating my dad, I feel like, right? I'm doing much better than he is. I think this is a really unique aspect. Now, this is a real copy of the note, right, that we did. We drafted up so you can see overall. Now, what I did is I didn't have quite enough money, so I used my IRA. I used my health savings account. I used my wife's IRA and her dad's IRA, and then old Army buddies of mine. So we kind of partnered them all together to do this small loan just because it was what worked for us. Now, as we go through this, the note lasted about 120 days. The due diligence overall took me about 2 to 3 weeks to complete. And then overall, my rate of return was going to be about 11% if we were to annualize it. So let's talk about other things that we had to do for it. Is I had to do some attorney paperwork, right? The borrower and me, we both did this. We had to go through some title company paperwork. And because we used the IRAs, we had to do Quest paperwork, right? Makes sense, right? If you're going to use an IRA custodian, you got to do the IRAs paperwork. Not bad. Overall, I kind of like this deal. I really did. It was a quick, it was an easy one, and I was able to get 11% rate of return. Let's look at number 3 as a case study. And I know I'm going through these kind of quick, guys. All right, but number 3 was a second lien position I did. Now, I really liked this because it was overall, if you think about it, a really high rate of return, but second liens can be risky. So what happened is there was a borrower borrowed $150,000 from a local hard money lender here in Houston. The buying price was $120,000 and the rehab was about $50,000. The ARV of the property was right in the $300,000 range, and this seemed like a pretty good deal. But a problem arose. As they're going through the construction, they end up finding some mold that had to be removed, and suddenly the borrower did not have enough money. So once again, I step in as a small investor. I know that he only needs 10 grand. And I'm gonna say, you know what? I'll help you out. So if I'm gonna do a second lien position, you wanna make sure you do this properly because these can be dangerous. First off, I'm gonna contact the very much so the first lien holder, person's in first position. I wanna make sure they know that the borrower needs more money, right? Hey, did you know this was going on? Because sometimes the first lien holder will actually just provide that additional funds, right? Just because someone needs a second lien on a house doesn't mean it's bad. Where it's bad is when they over leverage themselves, right? Next, man, I had to do a ton of due diligence. I had to not only do diligence on the borrower, I had to do diligence on the property and due diligence on the first lien holder, right? I had to not only know the borrower, I also had to know the other, hard money lender, in this case being Jet Lending. Now, I did happen to know the CEO there, so I made a quick, easy call, and I felt comfortable doing this. All right. Lastly, we had to use a really, really good attorney to make sure that everything was drafted properly. So if anything went wrong, I'd get my $10,000 back. Remember, he doesn't need a whole lot of money. Now, as I go through this, we lent 10 grand and I charged 5 points. 5. That's $500. That's it, because it's such a small dollar figure. So that's why I charge so many points. Next is they have to make a monthly payment to me of 1% until the loan is paid back. So that's only $100. So when we look at this overall, it's not a lot of money, but percentage wise, I'm literally going to be making 17% rate of return. That's really, really good. I passed off all the fees for the attorney and stuff like that, to the borrower. At the end of it, we made some decent money. And I really did appreciate this deal because it was small and it was easy, but we're running into some problems with the investments that I'm doing. So if we're really paying attention here, I have to consistently do due diligence. Now, when I'm doing this due diligence, it's not just social media. It's calling the hard money lender, calling attorneys, checking out properties, checking on contractors, driving down to properties, etc. I have to do a lot of work that takes really a lot of time. I legitimately work about 50 hours a week between Quest and the government relations committee that I have to work on. That's a lot. So at the end of the week, I don't have a lot of time to be doing these type of due diligence on a consistent basis. Right? Always, once I receive my money back, I have to find a brand new investment, a brand new one. So notice I'm having to consistently rotate this capital over. Lastly, how obnoxious it is to consistently sit here and redo documentation. Every single investment. Now, if any of you guys have been in real estate, every investment's different. And every time you have to work for a title company, the title company drafts things wrong, right? They always do. Oh, and then the lender drafts something wrong. Oh, this agent wants this. Re-sign the contract. Where you go, man, I have to do that every single time? Yes. If I'm doing investments individually.
And
so
you
this
probably
is
have
where
fees associated with each one too, correct?
That's correct. So every time we go through this process, that's something that I think a lot of people miss the boat on. So this is where we're going to switch gears, and I'm going to go ahead and walk through, because if we remember, my very first investment I showed you was all about my dad's one, where he was receiving a much smaller rate of return, at least on the surface. Remember, I'm able to get my 10%, 11%, 9% here, charge these points, and I'm working hard for those extra rates of return. So let's go ahead and look and see what that looks like overall. Now, 1 minute. Ooh. So first off, Me versus my dad. Right? Here I am. I'm going to start off. If I started off with 100 grand, my goal is to make my 12% on an annual basis, right? Earnings per year. Now, reason we think of this as 12% on an annual basis, and it's not, is overall, when we look at the aspect of the calculation, I'm really typically missing out on 2 months. Why? My investment paid off, and I had to redo another investment. I had to redo the due diligence, go through every single aspect. So I end up not really getting 12%. And it's something that people seem to miss, is they saw the interest rate only, and they didn't look at the overall aspect. Now, if this happens over a 5-year time frame, I can take 100 grand and turn it into $149,000. That's pretty attractive. It really is. There's nothing wrong with this. But look what my dad was able to do. My dad, in the exact same example, he only did one investment. He was looking for something that would pay roughly 8%. Remember, I want monthly payments. He wanted monthly payments. As he went through this aspect, remember, he only did one investment, only filled out documentation one time, only had to pay one aspect of fees, and he likes to label it as boring and easy because he only does it one time. Over a 5-year time frame, my dad made $1,000 more than I did, spending less time than I did, even though it looked like I got a better rate of return. I'm willing to email this spreadsheet to everybody so they can check it out themselves and do their own math. What's nice is we can go ahead and sit here and change whatever percentage you'd like to. Bloop, it'll change all your numbers going forward. So anyone here is welcome to these aspects. So I think sometimes too many people are only looking at a upfront rate of return, and they forget about the time it takes to complete an investment. Lauren, Chris, would you agree?
Yeah, and when you say 10 out of 12 months, I think that's you have to be pretty sophisticated, because typically any type of deal takes a month at least to close. So if you're doing 2 deals a year, you literally have to have one in your back pocket and you would have had to do the due diligence ahead of time. And then the other component to that is the risk involved. In a fund, again, you're investing as a small diluted portion of that capital. And individually, it's you. And then all of a sudden, if that investment goes bad, that you invested in individually, then you have to deal with the attorney. You have to deal with all of that stuff. I can't tell you how many people have done that and then called me and said, hey, I need your help because I don't have an attorney. I don't know what to do. So we get calls all the time from investors with SDRAs who basically are looking for our help because they got into that situation.
Exactly. And this happens so often. And notice, I'm the young guy. I'm the guy, like when I say that compared to my dad, right? Because I'm sitting here, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make this money work. I don't need my 8%, dad. I'm going to go ahead and get my 10. I'm going to try to get my 12. And what ends up happening is I end up spending more time than I realized. And I think it just comes with becoming older. I joke with him all the time about that. He's getting old. I know. But
it's also going to jump back is also you work 50 hours a week, but then people who are, your age also might be working 40, 50, may have kids at home. And then you've got, soccer practice, basketball.
Oh yeah. I'm not even talking about personal stuff, right?
You're not even hitting the personal side of things where you even have time to do some of this due diligence month after month after month.
Yeah. So beyond this, go ahead, Lauren.
I have kind of a mixed portfolio of some short-term loans and funds. I'm invested in some funds. So it is interesting because I'm sitting here and one of our loans just ended. It was, over 5 months. And I'm like, we need to figure out immediately
what to do.
Yep. I think Lauren may have froze there, but yeah, it's, what do you do? And in today's environment, the fix and flip side, again, is, starting to get a little riskier as well on that fix and flip side because some home values are softening. Remind people in our fund, we're buying notes that are pre-originated 5 or 6 years. So they've got the appreciation from 5, 10, even 15 plus years. So declines in house values for note funds that buy assets on the secondary market typically aren't is correlated to real estate as lending to somebody today who's going to fix and flip a property.
Not only that, now I got some more spreadsheets and stuff for everyone that's coming up.
Okay.
So one of the things too, I think a lot of times people miss, and remember guys, I am the IRA guy. I'm the guy that likes to see people use the retirement accounts for these passive style investments, these ones that we can receive monthly payments on that are very easy to do, use and utilize. So what I did is I created this quick little spreadsheet up here as well. And this is if you do an investment personally. And if we remember one of my very first slides, I said everyone is put into two categories. Remember, a taxable category or a non-taxable category. Well, if we do this investment personally, we got to go ahead and always remember that we're going to have a tax bracket. Now, I put two of these here so you can choose your tax bracket, same thing. You know, it doesn't matter what you want to put, whatever tax bracket you pop into. We're going to start with just a 30% just to make it easy. Once again, all this calculation changes for you guys, so you can take the spreadsheet. If you'd like to send me an email. But at the end of a 5-year time frame, doing an investment personally, you would receive roughly $71,000, right, in profit or in total all earnings. But I'm going to lose $21,000 to taxation. Right now, down here, once again, 25% bracket, so it's lower. You lose $17,000 to taxation. So I'm literally giving up roughly 20 grand in taxes alone. And that's just before any deductions, right? Obviously, you might be able to take some here, or maybe you might be in a higher bracket, so you might owe even more on those aspects. But if I do the same investment in the IRA, and I added in here the IRA's fees from a custodian. So if we use the fees from the custodian even in here, you would make an additional $24,000 in total. Why? Because I didn't lose any money to taxation, meaning I had more money to invest, more money to compound, and overall my average rate of return increases by using an IRA and avoiding taxation. So it's one of those things I think just sometimes people forget, like, look, if you have a 401k, if you have an IRA, if you already have a self-directed account, let's leverage these funds to do these type of investments because you can avoid taxes on those earnings. So,
and that's one thing with our fund that we really stress alongside of that is the way we structured our fund is a C corporation, whether you're using tax or self-directed IRA money, has significant benefits because on the self-directed side, and you can correct me, but there, you know, if people know what UBIT or UDFI is, you know, like if we were borrowing money, you know, there's a percent that might be taxable to that person, but because the corporation's paying the tax, that typically wouldn't get passed through to the investor. And then us issuing the shares as dividends also has significant tax benefits as well. And again, not providing tax advice, but you know, just it's very something we thought about that up front and made sure we wanted to get that implemented. So,
and that's good. That's something
nobody else does that.
Yep. And that's something that is really unique just to show the amount of due diligence from behind the scenes.
Yep.
Hey, Stephen, I see your question up here. He asked, if you roll over an IRA, is that a taxable event? No, it is not, but I'm going to change your verbiage, right? So when we use these terms, we have to remember that most of the people are not going to be as educated as an average IRA specialist, right? What they do is you call Charles Schwab, and whatever you say, they have a book in front of them. They're going to turn the page to that book. Most of the time, you're not rolling over an IRA, you're transferring an IRA. Now, to you, that might not seem like a big difference, but it is. Anytime you transfer an IRA to another IRA, nothing is reported. The IRS doesn't see that movement at all. It's not a taxable event, nothing like that by doing a transfer. If you say, hey, Charles, so I want to roll over my IRA to another IRA, it's still not a taxable event, but it creates two tax forms, being a 1099-R and a 5498. So what this means is you're reporting to the IRS that you moved your IRA. Now, some of you guys will, if it's not taxable, why does that matter? I don't know about you guys, but I don't like to report. I want to report as little as I can to the IRS, whether it's taxable or not. So make sure when you're asking these questions, you're talking to someone that really knows the difference between a rollover and a transfer, because surprisingly, a lot of CPAs, tax attorneys and everything will get this aspect wrong because they didn't even realize something as small as that was different. So when all possible, do a transfer. It's not reported. It doesn't create any tax forms, but either way, it is not a taxable event. Good question, Stephen. That was probably too long of an answer for you. Remember, I'm a nerd.
So Lauren's unfortunately dealing with lack of power. Her power went out at her house. She just texted me. She may try and call in. But if people have other questions, we'll take a few minutes to do some Q&A.
Yeah. So ultimately, guys out there, I put my email there in the chat box. A lot of times when I make these type of spreadsheets, people like them just so they can review, they can add their own things in there. It's nice just to have, I think, that nice visual aspect. So send me an email. If you want to set up an IRA, we'll go ahead and get you guys some discounts. I don't know what those are yet, but I'm assuming I can probably give you like I'm going to call it a BOGO coupon. Like you set up one IRA, the next IRA is free, or maybe give you like a $50 credit towards any future fees or something like that. Just if you're coming through these 70 investments and you're looking at investing with them using any type of self-directed account. So no questions. Look at this. Either A, really, really boring, right? Or B, I went through everything really easily for everybody.
And I've also put up there our contact information. So if people are again interested in the fund, you can email us at invest@70investments.com or give Lauren and her investor relations team a call, 805-410-8577.
Absolutely. And Chris and Lauren know exactly how to get a hold of me if you do have anything and this just to make it easy.
Yeah. So Stephen just asked, so if we sell the positions once it's transferred, the cash stays in account too, but 70 investments.
So what I think he's asking, yes. So you got to think of your IRA as its own entity. Stephen, you are an entity. If you set up an LLC, that LLC is its own entity. So when we go through these things, once your IRA does the investment, the IRA did the investment, so the IRA receives the profit. This is why it's tax exempt and you're not paying any taxes today. It does mean, though, you can't spend the money for personal use until you hit the proper age of 59. So 59 and a half, but I always say 59 to make it easy on people. So overall, just remember that aspect.
And Derek, I think one thing I want to mention too, which you may have mentioned it, but if not, your website has so much content regarding self-directed IRAs.
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely.
So the education side of it and so forth is for a lot of these questions. If you do have additional questions on those, there's so much information that you can find on the website that can definitely assist.
Absolutely. So once again, everything I mentioned today too, I just want to remind everyone, it doesn't apply just to an IRA with Quest. This holds true for any custodian. It really does.
Yeah.
So
Jack said, I have an IRA with a major company, Sage Point, and they provide places you can specify to invest in. Of course, 70 or Quest is not on the list. How could I have them use my IRA? I'm not familiar with Sage Point.
I am.
Okay.
So SagePoint only allows you, Jack, to invest in what we call publicly traded assets, right? They're physically selling you these assets, whether they're annuities, mutual funds, or publicly traded stocks, right? So they do not allow you to invest in private assets. Remember, they may call it a self-directed IRA, but that self-directed term is made up. You have to find a custodian that allows you to invest in what you would like to. So SagePoint, if you want to buy Apple stock, perfect. Right? They're going to help you with the Apple stock purchase, and because that's what they deal in. Quest, on the other hand, we will allow you to invest with 70 investments, but I am the same as SagePoint, right? The difference is I don't have investments for you. SagePoint is physically, they say, hey, we think you should put your money here. The problem is they're selling you an investment, so they get a commission every time they get to sell you on something. Now, this isn't bad, but this is why that's their job. That's why they're selling you these. Whereas I, on the other hand, say, hey, set up an account with me, I'll let you invest in 70 investments. But I'm not saying to invest there. All I'm saying is, hey, look, you find what you want to invest in. This also means, Jack, you don't move over your entire account. You already know how much you want to invest with 70 investments, so you move over that exact amount. You don't move over the full balance. So I hope that helps.
Okay. And the
Are
other thing I
investments insured?
Yeah, I want to mention one other thing about that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. You also do not charge commissions. You have a yearly fee, or you have some fees, but and like, you know, in a yearly fee or a transaction fee for investing, but you're not charging, correct me if I'm wrong, like 2% or a point on somebody's investment, correct?
That's correct. So I'm going to go with the most expensive option, being a flat fee of $350 a year on an annual basis. Right? It doesn't matter if you're investing $1 or $1 million. I'm still going to charge you a flat fee of $350.
Yep.
So.
Okay. So he's good. So Ron asked a question: are the investments insured, and how are they secured?
Sure. So anytime you're investing with any IRA custodian, every custodian out there should have its own form of FDIC insurance, right? But that is only insuring cash that is sitting. Now, as far as the investment is concerned, the purpose of a self-directed IRA is you did the due diligence. Notice when I was going through that, I said, did you get title insurance? Did you do the research on the contractors? Did you, Ron, know who you're investing with? So every investment can have a form of insurance, but it's really based on the due diligence that you as an individual have done. From that, Quest can't provide you insurance on a real estate asset strictly due to the fact that it's a piece of property. So what type of insurance do you need? Do you need flood insurance? Do you need fire insurance? Do you need homeowners insurance? Well, notice this is all things that you would probably need to get if it owned a physical asset. But we do have FDIC insurance for any of the actual cash that is just sitting.
And for our fund as well, to answer that question, you know, we're not an FDIC insured bank, so we can't guarantee or insure the investment. Our assets are secured by real estate. They're primarily first position liens. We do run title searches on them. We do make sure they've got proper insurance on the properties as well. So we go through a lot of what Derek said earlier about all the due diligence he does because he wants to be active. Basically, we're replacing Derek, and we're doing all that work for you. And, you know, you would step in really like Derek's dad, who can sit home, potentially make more money and enjoy more time with the grandkids. This is what and how I read that.
Hi, Lauren. She's back. You have power again?
No, she's on mute right now, though. You got to unmute, Lauren. Another question came through without asking. Without asking.
Do you want me to answer this, or do you want to answer?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So question from Mike: without asking for investment advice, what are the options for reinvesting the monthly dividends, both with the fund and the self-directed IRA? Thanks for the presentation. So I'll go first, since my answer is probably a little bit shorter. With our fund specifically, we do not have a reinvestment option. You can invest more than once. So if you were to want, you know, as long as it met the minimum investment threshold. So for example, our minimum investment right now is $500. Say you get a few months of dividends, you're like, hey, I have another 500 here, I want to put it back in. You can do that. You will have to fill out another subscription agreement. But we do not have an automatic reinvest like some funds do. So that answers that question.
And on the self-directed side, same thing. Let's say you did invest $50,000 and you start receiving dividends on a monthly basis. Well, I always tell people that cash that comes back to us will sit like a rock. It's in a non-interest bearing account, and it doesn't cost you anything to move it back over to the custodian that already had it. We don't have any type of cash minimums because it is not invested from our point of view. The purpose of us is, hey, we let you invest in what you know best. So sometimes people will leave cash sit up there to a certain point. Like Lauren was saying, hey, well, I'll receive the dividends. Oh, I got $5,000. Let's go and reinvest the $5,000. Other times we have people say, hey, when that money comes, can you just send it back to Fidelity for me, please? No problem.
So Derek, I have a question for you. Put you on the spot.
Yeah.
How many funds are you aware of that are similar to like ours that have minimum investments that typically are only about $500?
None, if you want me to be honest. So I get to travel across the US and I work with realistically somewhere right around 18 to 19,000 different clients that are looking to invest their funds. And the number one question I always get asked is like, Derek, man, I have $1 million. I invested my $1 million, but now I'm receiving those dividends. I don't know what to do with this small amount of capital. I don't know what to do with this $5,000, this $10,000, this small amount. What can I do? And until recently, I have had zero options for those individuals. So that is something big for you guys that I think you brought to the table that I think a lot of times people seem to miss out on. ignoring that, I love the accredited side that you guys work with as well, right? Being able to work with real accredited investors that can invest, those larger ends of capital that strictly are focusing on getting those better rates, that higher aspect rate of return. So,
Mhm.
did that help?
Yes, it did. I wanted to ask that question because I think that's one of, again, between, with the IRAs, that's what we hear a lot from, investors when we're putting this fund together was, I've been in notes for many years now, and I've had a lot of people come to me and say, oh, I've only got 5,000 or 10,000, and I'm not accredited. What can I do with that? Is there a solution for that? And again, when we created this fund, a lot of the criteria we put together was to allow for those accredited investors we had in the past, but also open it up because there's so many people out there who would love to invest and help others keep borrowers in their home, but they're locked out because they're not an accredited investor.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those weird aspects that people, once you get over that hump, that accredited aspect, then you're not worried about those type of things anymore. But it's always just trying to get to that next level, get to that hump. And so you guys are helping with that.
Any other questions? Want to drop them, give people a little bit more time to put something in the chat box. But if not, I just want to, couple of things mention, thank you so much, Derek, for your presentation and knowledge and sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. I know I've already received a few chats directly saying this was a great presentation, of course. So thank you for joining us today. And then also for those listening who are interested in investing with us, again, just wanted to mention that our minimum is $500 and that will be changing to $2,500 come February 1st. It is open to anyone who would like to invest, accredited, non-accredited, both. And we are offering 8% annually paid in monthly dividends.
If I could just end it and give one small little piece of advice, and I see it happen too often, is don't chase the investment. Don't chase the dollar. Don't chase those higher ROIs. A lot of times that's what gets people in trouble. That's where they try to take too many risks and they start spending a lot of time doing things. So if you can just take a leap of faith and find something that you're comfortable with a group that you like to work with, that's probably going to be a good investment for you. So, yeah.
Chris, any final thoughts?
No, I am good. For everyone who's listening, watching, thank you for joining us today. And as we mentioned, if people want to reach out, have questions, email Lauren directly, invest@seveneyinvestments.com. And I don't have the number popped up, but Lauren, you can provide the phone numbers again as well.
Yeah, you can reach me directly if you have any questions at 805-410-8577. That will ring directly to me.
Thank you, everybody. And
thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Thanks, Derek.